Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the newly named Football Fetishists podcast. I am George Eliopoulos here alongside Daniel Mountain and my other buddy, Darian Matasafung. How you boys doing?
Hello, I'm doing awesome. How are you, man?
Ready for Thanksgiving football, baby.
Yeah, and you got to stop asking me how I'm doing when at the beginning of every podcast it seems I've got a bet to pay off. And speaking of which, I think we might as well get that out of the way.
What is that? You've lost now? 3 out of 4?
3 out of 4, yeah.
I just like to say it out loud. That's
Yeah.
all. Not that I'm getting cocky.
I'll take it.
But,
Take
I
it right
haven't
on the
lost
chin.
yet. I guess that is getting cocky. But yeah, I think we talked about I'm gonna slap you today, and I'm also gonna slap you some other time in the season. I hear Darian doesn't want to slap you. Is that true?
That is true. I'm
He's
giving
just a
my
teddy bear.
my slap to Dan, the man. I think he definitely earned it with his number 1 placing.
Hey man, any one of us could have taken Antonio Brown. Like I just got lucky and got the first pick.
And-
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'll take some luck, so you know what? Let's just get it over with. Let's go.
All right, man.
Get over it.
I'll gladly go and destroy something beautiful.
Just for the record, I feel too horrible slapping one of my friends.
And meanwhile, he's about to Snapchat the whole thing.
I will
so
definitely
you can
Snapchat the
go
whole
fuck
thing,
yourself with that.
I literally had to change rooms to slap him. All right.
Okay. Oh, warming up. Oh,
Oh my God!
He's winding up. Here we go. Oh! Ladies and gents, that was a big slap.
I lost the bet. Oh, it got me like right in the side of the head.
Oh,
really
that
on
was
the face.
great.
So my levels went away there because
Are
we
you
were in.
concussed? Are you okay?
You gotta. I'll back you. Pull your levels down. You're a little too close now.
We were in
Holy
different rooms there, so I had to literally go change rooms to perform the slap. But
Oh,
anything for the
that was
viewers.
decent.
We're here
That
for
was
content.
decent.
We're here for content. All right. Okay, now on to the podcast. Fuck.
And just to clarify, I think I get to slap you at any time during the season as
That's
well.
actually
He's got
correct.
one more in the
So,
bank.
anytime
I'm
at
kind of
random.
like Russell Wilson from 2 weeks ago. I should be in concussion protocol right now, but I'm playing hurt. I don't give a fuck.
It's just like money in the bank in the wrestling world. He can cash that slap in when he wants.
Oh man!
All right, waiver wire pickups. Let's do it. Someone give me one.
All right, I got Josh Doxson this week. Oh, he's only 39% owned in Yahoo. And last week I said to grab Samaje Perine when he was only 7% owned.
Yeah.
Now he's 74% owned. For similar
Oh,
reasons.
pat yourself on the back.
I was gonna
Alright.
pat you on the back. That was a very well done
Okay,
play.
sorry. My point though was that for similar reasoning, I think Josh Doxson is going to be a great waiver wire pickup. So like Washington's offensive line has been banged up for a lot of the season. Their O-line is getting healthy, and Cousins will have more time to throw. With Terrell Pryor now on IR, Chris Thompson done for the year, and Jordan Reed constantly being Jordan Reed and battling injuries, then suddenly there aren't too many mouths to feed in this offense, and Washington and Doxson should rise to the top. So he should. I see him being the number 1 target moving forward, and I think like he'll have more volume, and I think he's a great pickup.
Yeah, I won't really debate you. I think it's kind of a matter of personal preference in terms of either way. There's kind of two guys. There's him and then there's Jamison Crowder that are going to kind of share the majority of the volume, and both of them got similar amounts of targets last week. I think Doxson had 7 and Crowder at 8.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a feeling out process. Just kind of waiting to see. One of them is probably going to blow up more than the other, and you're kind of just betting on Doxson or Crowder. I'm personally going Crowder, but at the same time, it's tough to know because they're both putting up similar numbers right now and have similar chemistry, and it's just a matter of time to figure it out.
For sure, I agree. I think both of them will have value moving forward. And I'm looking at their schedule here. They got Giants this week, at Dallas, at LA Chargers, home against Arizona, and then week 16, tough matchup against Denver. I agree with you, Dan. I think he will be productive moving forward, especially with the injuries to Chris Thompson and Jordan Reed and whatever.
I like both. I like Crowder and Doxson. I just said Doxson because Doxson's 39% owned, whereas Crowder's 79%.
Yeah,
For
So
sure.
I think Doxson.
I think
will-
both of them will be productive moving forward because there's going to be targets that are going to be doled out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think per game basis, it will be more of a game script, like matchup based. But yeah, I think both of them will put up some numbers, absolutely.
For sure.
All right, who you got, Darian?
For my waiver wire out of the week, it's Kenny Stills. I know it's Wednesday, and he's 58% owned now. But before yesterday, his ownage jumped up 21% yesterday. So if you're lucky enough, he's still on the waiver wire, I'd go get him, especially for a stash. Maybe not a play right away, but in the last 2 games, he's had 16 targets, turning 12 for 247 and 1 touchdown. He clearly has a great chemistry with Matt Moore, and he's kind of Matt Moore's security guy, And because of his route running ability, he does do a great job getting separation on his breaks. And he's actually a very good deep ball guy. Like, he can go get that ball. He burns guys pretty consistently when he gets the chance to. And I just really see him, putting up some numbers, especially if Matt Moore stays in the lineup. If Matt Moore earns the job from Cutler, which that's a big if.
That's the big if right
But
now.
Cutler has not performed well in the past, 4 starts that he had. So I think it's time they should, give Matt Moore a chance. They're obviously not going to make the playoffs. So I just think, give Matt Moore a chance. Cutler's not going to be back next year.
Yeah, I think it's totally reasonable that they probably should give the next starts the rest of the season to Matt Moore, but I don't know if they will. And it's pretty clear to see that the numbers are pretty different when he has Moore and Cutler. So that's definitely the gamble. But if Moore becomes the guy, he's in the wide receiver 2-3 mix the way he's
absolutely,
that's
where I see him.
Wait and see again with that. What do you think, Dan?
I would be wary about Kenny Stills. I mean, you kind of said exactly what I was thinking in the sense that if Matt Moore is the quarterback, Kenny Stills is a great add. I don't know that Matt Moore will be the quarterback. Jay Cutler is still in the concussion protocol. They haven't announced who will be their starter coming up, but Jay Cutler hasn't been terrible actually. Like, I mean, in Oakland he threw over 311 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, that was a pretty good game.
That was his one good game of the year, let's be real.
Right, but I mean, like, who knows what he would have done if he didn't
against one of the worst defense in the league.
That's fair. I think Matt Moore's probably the better quarterback. Not probably. I think he is the better quarterback. Whether or not they go with him, I don't know. So I think Kenny Stills is worth it, but just be careful.
And the thing is with Cutler, he is, like you said, in concussion protocol, and they have a pretty porous offensive line. So all it takes is one hit, and Cutler's gone for multiple weeks. So that's what I'm saying. Just keep your eye on Kenny Still. Put him on your bench. If Matt Moore becomes a starter, I would start him as a wide receiver 2 flex player.
Okay, so I've got 2 guys in similar positions, and I want to kind of hear your guys' opinions.
Okay.
Neither of them I love. Both of them I think you could pick up. Devontae Booker and J.D. McKissick. And both of them are kind of in similar scenarios where they kind of got the bulk of the workload last week. For Booker, he got 14 carries and 19 total touches, which were the most since week 13 of last year. And for McKissick, he played 50 of the 74 snaps, and also had 30 yards rushing on 7 carries and a few catches on top of it. And both of those guys have the potential. I guess what I'm saying is when I'm looking at this sort of end of season, you're hoping to pick up a guy that can become the number 1 for their team and potentially be a playable guy. And in Seattle's backfield, you've got 4 different backs. You've got Rawls, that was a healthy scratch this week. Eddie Lacy, who is, in my opinion, just a joke and should not be getting the ball. 2 carries to 3 yards last week. And then you've got the new guy, who's it? Mike Davis. Mike Davis. Who got hurt last week. But the point that I'm looking at is that he got brought up from the practice squad, and got to start immediately. And
he looked good. He definitely looked. He showed some ability. Absolutely.
Yeah. But even if you look at all the guys, no one's been productive at all. I mean, Rawls has gone for 49 carries for 125 yards on the season. Lacey's gone 51 for 130. Both of them basically 2.5 yards a carry. And McKissick's actually rushed for 4.36 yards a carry on the season, and he's been the guy in the passing downs. And I'm just kind of thinking, he has the chance to emerge kind of as I look at Seattle, a team that traditionally gets better as the season goes on, and with their defensive injuries, you got to wonder if they're going to start to become more of a spread them out passing type offense. And if he can kind of be the guy catching a few balls a game and then getting 8 to 10 carries, what kind of value he can have. But I think it is pretty limited. And then looking at Devontae Booker, you're just more looking at him saying he got 14 carries this week, first time hitting double digits, and he just got the chance to maybe be the number 1 back going forward, but you don't really know because it's only 1 game. So, what do you guys think? Where do you lean on
like
if
I had to compare the two, I do like J.D. McKissick more just because of his situation.
Yeah.
So with J.D. McKissick, he's obviously going to be the passing guy for the rest of the year. He's obviously shown great route running ability. He's a former wide receiver. He's got good hands. The one thing with him is he won't get the volume because he's such a smaller guy, and he definitely can't run between the tackles like the way they would want to in Seattle. But I do agree. I think they're going to start spreading the ball, spreading their offense out a bit more, using three wide receiver sets with 1 tight end and 1 running back. And with them, they're in a bad spot right now, especially with the loss to Atlanta. They're gonna have to push really hard in a tough schedule to make the playoffs, and they're just gonna have to cater to their strengths and then also cater to their weaknesses. So obviously, one of their weaknesses is their run game, is their run blocking, is their pass blocking. So I definitely agree. I think they're gonna spread it out And the thing with McKissick is what they can spread him out at receiver in the slot or even out wide, and it creates a bad mismatch with a linebacker or safety on him. So I definitely like his situation a bit more. Booker, it was clear they were trying to get him the ball a lot more than CJ, and his usage shot up. He had 98 total yards. Am I right? Yeah, he had 98 total yards last week, and he outsnapped CJ and outtouched CJ. And CJ, it seems like this happens every year with CJ. He hits that wall, and he just slows right down. He literally looks...
Or he just gets hurt.
Or he gets hurt. Yeah, it's one of the two things. He slows right down, and you know what? It could be a combo of both. Like, injury causing him to slow down, and Booker clearly looks like the healthier and has more ability. I just don't like the Broncos' offense whatsoever. They're starting a Paxton Lynch this weekend. They got a horrible offensive line and no run game to really speak of, so... I'd take McKissick over Booker at this point.
To me, it's easy actually. I would take Booker over McKissick. For me, I don't love either one.
I don't love either one. I just want to be clear.
I like Booker better though because Seattle. Let's be real. Their running back is Russell Wilson. Like they're running. Like they have not been able to run the ball all season. I don't think that's going to change. Like teams have learned how to stop their run game all season long. And Russell Wilson's had to rely on the pass all season, and he's been the one running the ball. Last week he had 86 yards, and I don't actually know.
That kind of plays into McKissick's like wheelhouse. So if they're moving away from the run game, more of a spread, passing the ball.
Right, but I'm saying like I don't think that
sure.
I think that when they do pass the ball, they've been stuffed at every opportunity so far this season. I mean, sure when
You mean run?
Or yeah, every time they try to run, they've been stopped at every opportunity so far this season. And Devontae Booker, like you said, his usage is going up. In the last 3 weeks, he's been within 3 carries of C.J. Anderson, and he's been drawing more targets than him every week. So Booker looks like he's taking over the backfield in Denver, and I no longer think it's a 3-headed monster because it seems like Jamal Charles has just become relevant to them.
Completely.
So, I mean, I would speculatively, I can't talk right now, add Booker, depending on how he goes this week, because I think with Paxton Lynch running the offense now, things could change. But just look to see how he does this week, because maybe his usage will go up, maybe it'll go down, but I think he's a better add because maybe it'll blow up.
I would keep a close eye on Mike, is it Davis or Mike James?
Davis.
Mike Davis. I would keep a close eye on him, because the touches he got last week, he looked extremely explosive, decisive, and he can catch the balls. He did. I think he hurt his groin, and so he's a week-to-week injury. I feel like they're gonna try and turn him into their starter because he definitely showed some things. So keep an eye on that.
All in all, it seems like no one's too high on any of these backs, but Dan's a speculative add on Booker, and I would lean towards McKissick just because I feel like the offense could really cater towards.
Remember, it's week 12, so the waiver wire is pretty bare at this point, right? So,
and I'm just looking at sort of past trends of Seattle towards the end of a season and Pete Carroll kind of being willing to do anything, and I just see the potential for just an unexpected high usage for McKissick where he gets 5-6 catches a game and also is running outside the tackles.
For sure.
But
absolutely.
I
think it's there.
It's really just a shot at the dartboard right now. It's not nothing too likely. And before we get past waiver wire, I just want to throw out there that still 41% owned only is Josh Gordon. And I think at this point... I
just added him yesterday.
At this point, if you haven't added him, I think that is the ultimate speculative add that if you can get him on your team, he has a chance to be a wide receiver 1 in the playoffs. He might turn into nothing. He might get suspended again, or nothing might end up happening. But this is a guy, if you can get him for free right now, just do it. Take the chance.
And Hugh Jackson just came out and said,
it's
like Christmas. I got a new toy, and like. You clearly see that, they don't want to go winless this year. Yeah. They really don't. So anytime they get a playmaker or someone with, great talent and ability, they're going to do their best to try and get this guy the ball and maybe win a game, right?
Let's just not overlook the fact that the one season he had in 2014, he proved that he might be the most talented wide receiver to enter the league.
Let's not reference the 2014 season just because it's been 3 years. This guy, we have no idea how much pot this guy's smoked the past 3 years.
Well, he was smoking it then too. But I know. He just might have been the most talented wide receiver to enter the league.
His talent is through the roof.
What if the drugs were what made him a great wide receiver? What if he's like Popeye?
Then that's even like a worse thing because apparently he's clean now. So
that's my only fear. Like he needs
not playing
the weed
into his favor.
If he gets clean and like all of a sudden he no longer has the weed, what if he's not the same guy? I don't know.
Well, we'll find out.
He's definitely worth a bench stash.
Definitely high upside.
Let's see who we want to go with for our defenses for next week. Darren, who are you wanting to stream?
For my streamable defense, it's Atlanta. They're 25% owned in standard Yahoo leagues right now, and they have a great matchup. The Bucks They are coming off 2 wins, but let's be real. They weren't big win. Like, they weren't convincing. They didn't look overly impressive. They got Ryan Fitzpatrick back there. Enough said with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And the past 2 weeks, they've scored 28 combined points against, decent offenses in Dallas and Seattle. We all know the debacle that was the Dallas game with the left tackle and 6 sacks to Claiborne. But, they still did it. They went out there and they did it, right? So you got to give them credit for that. And just in terms of the Atlanta team in general, they're trending up. I think they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to push for the rest of the year. But this week especially, great matchup against the Bucs.
Well, I'm looking at Tennessee, who's owned in 23% of leagues. I think they're a pretty easy choice if they're available. They're playing Indy, who's the third team, who's given up the third most points to defenses. And it just kind of feels like a get-right game for Tennessee after giving up 40 points to Pittsburgh and playing on a Thursday. And so I just kind of view that as an opportunity for them to go in and just really dominate a really poor offense in Indy.
More than a defensive stream, I want to talk about defenses getting ready for the playoffs, because we're ramping up for it right now, and the buys are over, but I still stream defenses. So I think that you can't trust certain defenses to run you all the way through the playoffs. There are some really good defenses that run into some terrible matchups over the playoffs. For example, if Seattle and Denver has taught us anything, it's that in today's NFL, I don't think there are any defenses that are matchup proof anymore, except maybe the Jags. But I mean, but they play Seattle in week 14, which could be dangerous. So if you spend a high draft pick on Denver or Seattle, they are not the same defenses. I think Seattle could honestly be dropped because the Legion of Boom isn't booming anymore with Richard Sherman on IR. Cam Chancellor could be out for the year. Earl Thomas has been in and out with a hamstring issue. Plus, they have to play the Jaguars, Rams, and Cowboys in the playoffs. So I think if you have a quote-unquote great defense, you should be looking into streaming people for the entire playoffs long. So some good defenses that I think might actually screw you. So obviously the Seahawks, be careful. The Rams, the Saints, and the Steelers. All of these defenses play great offenses in the playoff weeks. And some defenses that could potentially help you out in the playoff weeks. New England, so they had a terrible start. New England, but they've become sneaky good lately, averaging 11 fantasy points in the last 3 games. They play Miami in week 14 and Buffalo in week 16. So if you go with the Patriots, be careful of the Steelers in week 15. But I think now is the time you can start rostering a defense on your bench. I never have 2 defenses except for this time of the year, because now you got to start figuring out exactly when your defenses are going to hit their strides. And I don't want to take the chance of losing out on Fab or losing out on a high waiver priority when I need it the most. The Baltimore Ravens, obviously they're owned, but if you have them, be careful in week 14. They might win you your league in week 15 and 16 when they play the Browns and the Colts. But in week 14 they play, I believe they take on the Steelers, so be careful there. Bengals would be a good matchup for that 14 week because they play the Bears in week 14. The Lions could help you out because they've been surprisingly good. They have the triple B matchups all playoffs long of Bucks, Bears, Bengals, so I think they're startable in any one of those matchups. And the Chargers, while they're not the best option here, they're only 30% owned, so you're likely able to get them. They can help you in weeks 14 and 16 when they play the Redskins and the Jets. So I think right now is when I'm looking into having maybe 2 defenses to make sure I've got my bases covered for all 3 weeks. Just don't think that you're a lock just because you have a great defense.
Yeah, just time to start changing the approach. If you're locked into the playoffs, it's time to start thinking about how you're going to win each of those matchups. Right?
For sure.
All right, so moving on now, we want to go to some of our Week 12 studs and duds, or Week 11 studs and duds, I should say. And someone give me a stud to start.
Stud to start. I'm going to say Orleans Darkwa. He's had 70-plus yards in the past 3 games, in each game. And it's clear the Giants have changed their offense to cater to his talents. So he's really good at running between the tackles. He runs extremely hard. He's a one-cut guy. Not much shake and bake to him. No nonsense. He'll get what he can. And the Giants, I think that we've talked about it before, but they've changed their running style. So they aren't very athletic. They don't have good footwork. So they've changed to trapping and power runs, which are quick hitting runs for him. And it's starting to pay off. And he's got a good matchup this week, I think, against the Redskins, who have given 5 touchdowns to running backs in the last 4 games. So I wouldn't count on him, blowing your socks off with a 20-point game, but I could see him getting around, 70 yards and 1 touchdown, be pretty decent start in a flex.
Yeah, I like that. I think he's going to continue. I used to think the Giants just couldn't run the football, but now I think Orleans Darkwa changed my mind on that. I think it was just Paul Perkins that was the problem.
I think that was the problem too, and I think they were running the wrong type of offense. They weren't catering to the strengths of what they had. They were trying to do something.
What I would
else.
actually say back to that is because I think you made the point that they changed their offense, but I think it's also less that they're catering to their strengths and more realizing that without any receivers and with an aging Eli, their only real path to success is to establish the run game.
Exactly.
So I think that, and seeing that Dark was clearly stepped up as a guy who fits that role and can be a decent one-cut runner.
He's just one of those model of consistency guys. Yeah. Every run he gets, he's going 100%, and I can respect that.
My only concern does come with because it's kind of he's not big on explosive plays and it is kind of an established running game kind of offense. Mm-hmm. And if they go down 14-0 in the first quarter on a stupid Eli pick and then another touchdown, you're risking maybe a game where he doesn't really get much of anything.
For sure. I just want to say Eli has been doing an excellent job taking care of the ball. I'm just going to put that out there the past couple of weeks.
And because you just said that, I'm going to set the over-under at 3.5 picks this weekend because that's an Eli pick.
That's Peterman numbers.
Yeah, there's no way.
But I mean, just a small note on Orleans Darkwa. If you have him starting right now in your lineup, he plays tomorrow on Thanksgiving. So just be careful if he's in your flex, because if you lock him in your flex and something goes wrong down the line, you no longer can start a wide receiver instead. So anybody who's playing on a Thursday, if you can get them into your regular lineup instead of your flexes, that's huge for me. Even if the player is amazing, I'd still flex them just because anything can happen. Dan
Mountain always thinking about the
logistics. He's the logistics.
Never have a Thursday night player or Thursday player in your flex, in my opinion.
All right. Well, give me your stud now, Dan.
I had Kenny Stills, so we talked about him a little bit.
Stud or dud?
As a stud. Well, he was a huge stud. He was a stud this week, and that's kind of like we're talking about whether or not they're going to continue, right?
Yep.
So he went 7 for 180 and 1. Again, I think this was a product of Matt Moore. So if Matt Moore sticks around, he'll stick around. If Matt Moore doesn't, he won't. And even if Matt Moore does, there's still the chance that Matt Moore, has a lot of mouths to feed between Landry and Parker and Thomas. I am a little worried about Kenny Stills. I wouldn't bank on him being a wide receiver 2 every week. I think he's with Matt Moore, and he's a mid-range to high-range wide receiver 3. Without Matt Moore, I don't even see him being owned. I think he's a flex play at best without Matt Moore.
Wait, I'm confused. Is that a dud or a stud then?
Well, I'm saying he was a stud this week, but I don't think his studliness will continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't have too much to say. We've talked about Kenny Stills, and I mostly agree with those sentiments. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go with my stud, Latavius Murray, who has. I believe, Dan, you were the one that predicted that he was going to become this RB2, and I was a little hesitant on saying that because for me, he never passed the eye test. He was just kind of a plotter who I thought was going to lose his role, but you proved him to be right, and he's really carved out.
For 1 week. I don't know what. I was right for 1 week.
Well, you were right for 1 week, but I mean, just like the trend has been in the last 5 games, he's had at least 15 carries every single game, and he's had a couple of weeks where he hasn't done much with them. But he's also getting every single goal line touch, and if you're getting 15 plus carries a week and all the goal line touches, you're an RB2. Doesn't really matter.
He's looking a lot better than McKinnon right now.
Yeah, he wasn't earlier with his yards per carry, but for some reason they kept giving him the ball, so there must be something going on.
I think McKinnon's one of those guys that he showed a couple of games and he flashed some ability, but he's not one of those 20 touch not even close. He can't handle the workload. I think, but Latavius can.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would, and I will fully say I was wrong, and I think he definitely is an RB2 going forward. But the other point also is similar to the game strip thing I mentioned with Darkwa. I mean, he's playing on a team that's won 7 straight games or something like that.
They're hot,
and they're playing really hot. They've got Case Keenum as quarterback, and I'm always just scared of. I mean, last year they started off 5-0 and kind of fell off, and my concern is potentially them kind of falling off as a team. And because he's got a guy in McKinnon right behind him who is really good at a different role, if the game script changes and they've got to do things differently, it'd be very easy to not give him these carries because they've got a guy who can play a different role really well. That's my only concern, but I still have
I would say to that concern, I think the Vikings are literally one of the hottest teams in the league right now. And I don't see their offense or defense falling off for a number of reasons. Number one, Case Keenum is playing up to his surrounding talent. So it's not like he's carrying the team in any way or shape, but he's got these weapons like Thielen is absolutely a breakout superstar this year.
Yeah.
Diggs is obviously shown great ability and can, when he's healthy, put up some big numbers. And in their running game, it's definitely
Rudolph
showed up.
is a great security
and,
blanket.
And you know what? The biggest thing is their offensive line play. It's been unbelievable for for what they were coming into the season, especially from last year. I think they've given up 1 sack in the last 5 games, which, is unbelievable. And I just see the way their offense is performing and the way they're getting it done is I would be confident in starting pretty much any one of their big players.
I wasn't even saying last week I think he'd be an RB2 moving forward. I think that now.
Yeah.
But last week I was just saying Murray's going to be the better back to own than McKinnon. But he's got great matchups coming up. Detroit, Atlanta. I mean, he's got Carolina in week 14. That's his only bad matchup coming up. But Detroit, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Green Bay, and those other ones, like, I think you can trust him as an RB2 moving forward. Just be careful of week 14 against Carolina.
Seems like we're all on the same page with that. So,
Love
Darian, give me a dud for the week.
My dud, well, I'm kind of taking this a different way than you guys. So my dud was someone that did well, but I don't see them keeping up. So kind of like how you did it with Kenny Stills.
I guess we need to define our studs.
We'll make sure we have it sorted out for next time.
Yeah, for my dud, I have Devontae Adams, which he had actually a good game last week. He had 8 catches for 126 yards. I just don't see that going to be moving forward. I don't see him getting that type of production. I actually watched that game, and a lot of his catches were tough catches. He's not a big separation guy. He's a high point, go get the ball, win the 50-50 type of ball guy. And Hundley has not been accurate in his starts. And I really don't see him doing that on a week-to-week basis where he can be consistent. And he's playing Pittsburgh this week, who only allows 190 yards per game and 3rd fewest points to wide receivers. So I would pull him out of your lineups this week if you were going to put him in. And yeah, this Packers team is, especially the offense, is not trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think all you need to say was Brett Hundley is his quarterback, and I think I mean, he might have pretty good talent, maybe not elite talent, but he's a pretty good receiver. But you mentioned he's not very good at separating, but he's a good high point guy. And also, when you have Aaron Rodgers, that works out pretty well because you don't need much separation.
No,
he'll
puts
find
it
it
on
for
the
you.
dime, right?
And then you go from Aaron Rodgers to Brett Hundley. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I don't have expectations from going forward.
Well, to be honest, I'm not so sure that I completely agree that he's a dud moving forward. Like, Jordy Nelson has not been getting the targets compared to Devontae Adams, mostly probably because the best corner has been covering Jordy Nelson, and I don't think Brent Hundley's good enough to throw to or past a good corner. But that's kind of my point moving forward, is that I think Jordy Nelson will continue to draw off the best corners, and Hundley's got to throw the ball to someone. So, I mean, I don't hate Devontae Adams moving forward. I don't think he's droppable, and I do think he's kind of
startable. I didn't say he was droppable. I'm just saying I'll pull him out of your starting lineup.
Right, but I mean, Baltimore they've given up the 31st least amount of points to wide receivers, and he still had 10 targets and pulled out 12.6 or 126 yards. Week before that, he still got 90 yards and a touchdown against Chicago, who's been a good pass defense. Right, it just seems like he is the preferred target. I
wouldn't say they're a good pass defense. I say they're a good run defense.
Okay, they're 18th. They're 18th least amount, so they're mediocre. They're right in the middle of the pass defenses. All right. But I think he's a good flex play. I think he could be a wide receiver too potentially. I don't think he's going to be a dud moving forward. I think it'll be more of the same, where you see some weeks he gets 12 points, some weeks he gets 3. But I mean, for good matchups, Tampa Bay, Cleveland, 13-14. I think he's definitely startable there.
Okay.
I agree though. Pittsburgh, you should sit him.
Well, we'll see what happens this weekend. But give me your dud now.
My dud was Golden Tate. So I guess I'm the opposite of Darian, because I'm just saying a guy who was bad this week, but I think will be good. Mm-hmm. So it won't continue. 4 targets is all he got this week, and that's the least he's gotten all season long. He's definitely Matt Stafford's number 1 guy, and Matt Stafford throws the ball a lot. I don't see this continuing. Don't be afraid of Golden Tate moving forward. As much as I love both him and Jones,
yeah, but
I think they're both.
I'm with you. I don't think there's much to debate here, because the 4 weeks prior he had his lowest output was 86 yards. Yeah. I mean, he's a guy you're starting every week. There's no question about it.
He's a clear part of their game script. Yeah. I have no problem with.
He was just a surprise dud for me. I thought he was going to have a good game.
I don't think there's much to debate there. I think we're all in agreement. He's good to go going forward. So let's go with a guy who took the league and fantasy world by storm and has cooled off considerably in Kareem Hunt, who this week went for 7.7 fantasy points in Standard League, 18 carries, 73 yards, 3 receptions for 4 yards, and this is his 3rd consecutive week with less than 10 fantasy points after the first 3 weeks in which he had at least 20 every single week. So, I mean, he's obviously cooled off a lot, and I am looking at him though, and I think he's a big question mark going forward. Mm-hmm. He's obviously, I mean, if you've got him on your team, he's a guy that really could be the deciding factor of if you are a championship level team or not, because he's either a high end RB1 or he might turn into kind of a flex play, which is what he's been the last few weeks. But the one thing I look back to towards last week was, after getting only 9 carries 2 weeks ago, last week he only got 4 carries in the first half and then got 14 in the second half. And I kind of viewed that as like Andy Reid being like, okay, this can't be how our offense works. We need to start getting him the ball more again. And Andy Reid he's a really smart offensive guy. You can make certain complaints about him, but he's proven to be pretty innovative and creative offensively. And so I'm pretty optimistic that he'll get the ball a decent amount in creative ways and get his touches going forward. But I mean, you can't be too optimistic on him at the same time.
Yeah, there's some worry there, absolutely. I'm worried about the offense in general because they were very big play dependent at the beginning of the year, and it was working. Now that teams have kind of changed their schemes and done their scouting on him on the offense, that those big plays have dried up, and you're seeing it. They're having trouble scoring. Especially last week against the Giants, it was evident that that once the big play wasn't there, they weren't able to drive the ball. And the thing with Kareem Hunt is you see it every year. These rookie running backs that they come in, they light the world on fire for a few weeks, and then they realize, hey, I didn't train for this. I'm not ready to take this type of workload, just physically and mentally. And as the season wanes on, and they start to get beat up a bit, they start to wilt. And I've kind of seen that with Kareem Hunt, especially not like last week. He definitely showed that he has some left in the tank, but those previous weeks before that, he was really struggling, like running through mud. Again, I think he definitely will be a flex, maybe RB2 for the rest of the year. But without those big plays, I think they're trending in the wrong direction right now. Absolutely.
What do you think, Dan?
I think I'm a little biased because Kareem Hunt and the Chiefs burned me this week. I picked them to win or as my survivor pool pick.
It was a tough week for you.
I was in the Final Four. I could have won $1,100 if I had gotten all the way through. But my actual opinion on Kareem Hunt, though, I think he's a product of Kansas City showed their hand in the first 3 weeks. They showed that like their number one go-to guy is Kareem Hunt. He's gonna be a 3-down back. He's gonna be pass catching. He's gonna be the guy we go to in red zone situations. He's just the guy.
Yeah.
So I think every defense since that first 3 weeks, they've been looking for Kareem Hunt. They've been trying to shut him down on purpose. And I thought in week 9 before the bye week, I thought they were just limiting his carries against Dallas because he's a rookie and they wanted to give him a bit less work. But now that he got 18 carries against a bad rush defense in the New York Giants and he couldn't get it done against them, I am seeing a little bit of concern. Don't get me wrong, you're starting him every week. He's got great matchups going forward for running backs, but I think that he is no longer that top 5 running back like he was looked at in the first 3 weeks because defenses look at him that way, and it's unfortunate.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to do now, as we're getting set for the playoffs, a pretty common concern right now, if you don't have one of those top 6 or 7 elite quarterbacks, it's time to start figuring out if you've got someone on your roster that is the guy that's going to carry you through the playoffs, or if you need to find that guy on the waiver wire right now. And so we're going to take a look at the guys who, at least on Yahoo, are owned 10th through 20th in terms of owned percentage, and kind of take a look at what we think of those guys and who each of us think you should be looking to roster, particularly based on playoff matchups and stuff like that. Maybe who you should avoid, someone who might be a little overrated. So I'm going to list off the guys that are ranked 10 through 20th first, and that's Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Stafford, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota, Phillip Rivers, Andy Dalton, Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning, Tyrod Taylor, Case Keenum, Josh McCown.
Can we maybe take Aaron Rodgers off that list and move down to the 21st quarterback? I'll talk about the 21st quarterback later. Sure. It's okay. I'll surprise you with who it is. Just because I know who it is off the top of my head.
Sure.
Because I mean, obviously, see Aaron Rodgers. Oh, actually, he might be coming back.
Well, I mean, because that is something like if you really wanted to. I mean, he could be there for 2 games.
Could be. Yeah.
But yeah. So.
Wait, sorry. Is this the by points or by own percentage?
By own percentage.
Oh, it's by own percentage.
By own percentage. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you're okay. I thought you were talking about. Okay, yeah.
No, I'm going by own percentage.
Okay.
And yeah, because I feel like kind of above that list, those are guys you're pretty much set and you're not going to be able to touch. I mean, some of these guys are owned a lot, but at the same time, like there's always someone floating around in fantasy leagues where they're owned in 85%, but they're cut this week kind of thing. So I'm just going to kind of go through them, and you guys kind of cut me off if you have an opinion on if you really like this guy or really don't like this guy. And I'm going to start with Big Ben.
Should we just say yay or nay, maybe?
And we move on. But the first guy who I only include, he's owned in 94% of leagues, but I include him because I actually think that he's very overrated right now, and that's Ben Roethlisberger. he's owned in 94% of leagues, but his playoff schedule starts with Baltimore, which is a horrendous matchup in terms of when they play each other, New England, and then at Houston.
Right.
And my issue is that also was last game was his first time all season going over 20 points in standard scoring. And I mean, if like he might be Ben Roethlisberger, the guy that you imagine is going to be great, but he hasn't put up the numbers at all this year until last week. And it's about to get real cold, and Ben's old, and they've got Le'Veon Bell. And you got to think that if they have a path to success right now, it's to run Le'Veon Bell 30 times a game and try to win that way. So I think that he's not really a guy that you should even want to be starting in the playoffs.
Okay, I strongly
disagree as well.
Yeah, I strongly disagree. I think they finally started clicking last week against Tennessee, like full out offense, green light, go.
One game, you're right.
Absolutely. I hear you.
I hear you too. I disagree with both of you. Okay, sorry.
I hear you. But let's be real. They have the most talented offense in the league. In just terms of weapons and players and their ability. And Ben finally, he snapped. Him and Antonio snapped. And I think they'll continue snapping the rest of the year. Green Bay, Cincinnati, Baltimore. Yes, very tough matchups. But we've seen...
Okay, Green Bay...
For passing.
Yeah.
Green Bay's 21st. And just terms of... they're all 3 primetime games, Sunday, Monday, Sunday. And I think they're rounding into form. They're going to be, I think, one of the top 2 teams, not only in the NFL, or in the AFC, sorry, but in the NFL. And yes, I hear what you say when they want to force feed Lev Bell 30 times a game. I just don't see that working. I think they're going to spread their offense around. I think Ben will do a good enough job getting the ball to his playmakers where they can score some touchdowns.
Okay, here's my take on Big Ben. So I don't think he's that different from last year, and I don't think he's even that different from the year before, because Big Ben historically has been a home-road split guy. He's a different human at home than he is on the road. And this season, he's only played hard defenses at home until last week. So I think when he played Tennessee at home last week, he blew up because he was at home against a bad defense. The only other teams he's played at home, Minnesota, Jacksonville, Cincinnati. Those teams are all amazing against the pass. So now he's got Green Bay coming up at home and New England coming up at home.
And
so I agree.
Baltimore at home.
Yes, but I do agree you shouldn't start in Week 14 in Baltimore. But if you can own Big Ben and someone else, I think that home game against New England in Week 15, I think he could be one of the top 5 quarterbacks of that week. New England's pass defense has been the second worst in the league, and he's definitely worth starting this week against Green Bay at home. And if you can find somebody for that Week 14 that can get you through to that Week 15, then Big Ben, I think, could win you all the way to your championship.
What I would also say on Week 15, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I already mentioned that I think that you should be running Le'Veon Bell 30 times a game regardless right now. But especially when you're against Tom Brady in New England, if you're planning to win that game, you need to be controlling the clock and running the football.
Whoa,
so that's how I see it.
I mean, I think that both teams are going to put up a bunch of points. So like when a lot of points are getting scored, when you're losing, then you typically throw the ball more because you're running out of time, right? So I see a game script where A, he's at home, so he throws the ball more at home, and B, he's against a good offense, so he'll be throwing more there as well. I see Antonio Brown going off that week again, just like he did last week.
All right, well, it'll be fun to watch this one because we couldn't disagree more then.
I own him in one of my leagues, Big Ben, so I've been looking into this for a while. I've got him matched up with Tyrod and like.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 11 is Matt Stafford, who I think is pretty safe. If you own him, he's probably worth starting. I don't think we need to spend too much time on him.
Love him.
And then Jared Goff, who I know we have some different opinions on. He's the number 12th guy, owned in 91% of leagues. And I think that if you have him, you need to be looking for another quarterback to start in the playoffs because his matchups, Week 14, Philadelphia, Week 15 at Seattle, Week 16 at Tennessee. He might not be startable in any of those games and maybe startable in one of them, but you started with Philly and Seattle. I'm thinking those are going to be 2 terrible matchups right off the bat. I just don't see how he's someone who you want to be starting in the playoffs right now.
I don't know. I think Philadelphia, it's going to be a similar thing to what I was saying with Big Ben. I think it's going to be one of those what is it? Like what do they say? Like
Gunslingers?
A gunslinger, yeah. Like they're both going to be competing for more points. Philadelphia's a great offense. LA's a great offense. I could see them getting into just a battle of who can score the most touchdowns. So I'm not sure I agree with that. And Seattle's not the same defense like I was saying before. So they're not a bad matchup because Richard Sherman no longer covering your number 1 guy. Like the corners are all messed up over there in Seattle. And Tennessee's an awful defense. So I kind of disagree with you about Jared Goff.
With Goff, I kind of agree with you, but I'm kind of more with Dan. Like, he definitely has shown he's struggled against elite defenses this year. With the last game against Minnesota, he had 225, no tutties, 8 rush yards, 9.8 standard lead points. Yes, I think the Seattle matchup especially is going to be a bad one for him. The Philly one, I'm kind of on the fence about because, yes, Philly has the number 1 rush defense in the league. and they are the hottest team in the league. I just think the Rams' offense is good enough at home to set up some play action and maybe hit some big plays. And the Rams, give them credit. They're number one in their division for a reason, and Goff is a big part of that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the Seattle matchup might not be the greatest. I mean, watch
The
Cam
Seattle one's
Chancellor's
not
health.
a good one.
Well, but watch Cam Chancellor's health. If Chancellor's back, then it's a.
It is also
That's
at
true.
Seattle,
It's a
which makes it
different.
pretty
It's a
tough,
different
but,
team.
yeah.
It's a different defense without those
Either
Sherman
way,
and
it's another guy that we
Cam.
all disagree on, but we'll see what happens going
Absolutely.
forward. Let's just rattle through a couple guys here. Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota are 13 and 14. I don't really like either of them because Mariota hasn't been running the football at all. He hasn't had more than 10 yards in 4 of the last 5 games rushing. Derek Carr has only had 15 points once since week 2. So those are two guys who I don't like too
Derek
much.
Carr, I do not like at all. Like, he's actually made some really good plays, but his receivers are just not catching the ball for him. So he would almost be a drop for me.
Well, I'm going to go to the next one, number 15, who's the guy I'm looking at on this list, in Phillip Rivers, who's owned in 80% of leagues. And my thing when I'm looking at him most specifically right now is his playoff matchup, which is Washington, who's the 5th easiest, Kansas City, the 9th easiest, and then the Jets, who are the 13th easiest. So 3 positive matchups come playoff time. And also, I mean, particularly, I also like starting him this week on Thanksgiving. You've got Sean Lee out for the Cowboys. And I also this just kind of is more of an emotional thing in terms of the way I view the Chargers right now. They're kind of that team that no one really wants to play. They've got a ton of talent. They're 4-6, and they definitely still believe they have a chance. And they've got a few easy matchups coming up. And I think Phillip Rivers has a chance to really blow up in the next few weeks and become a good top end guy.
He could push hard and definitely be a weekly starter.
Beautiful playoff matchups. Keep throwing
Great
the ball to
matchups.
Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Keep
Great
throwing the ball to
matchups.
Keenan Allen.
Exactly.
I was hoping he was going to get more targets this season, and finally we're starting to see it. So if he keeps throwing the ball to Keenan Allen,
And I
he'll be
do like
successful.
Hunter Henry. He has not showed up so far this year, but last week he had a decent game. Can someone pull that up for me, actually?
Hunter Henry.
Yeah.
He's been great, but like it's either 0 or it's like 12.
Yeah, okay, so he's been pretty bad this past couple weeks.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah,
He's been
my bad.
pretty bad.
Let's
But
bet
they
this
do
out.
have some good matchups for him, like Cleveland, number 4, in week 13, 4th most, Washington, 3rd most. Kansas City's a tough one, but then the Jets to close it out.
He plays Cleveland week 13. That's a guaranteed touchdown. If you
That
I
is
think
great,
the tight end has scored a touchdown against Cleveland every week for the last
And this
6
offense,
weeks. It's hilarious.
their passing offense at least, is trending upwards, and so I would agree. He's a good player.
Number 16 is Andy Dalton, who I don't think anyone here probably
No.
wants, so move on from him.
Red Ranger.
Number 7.
He morphs into a terrible player all the time. That's why he's the Red Ranger.
Number 17 is Aaron Rodgers, which is a little weird because obviously he's not IR. He might play no games, but he's eligible as of week 15. He goes at Carolina and then Minnesota. I'm not picking him up right
Nothing
now.
there.
I'm sorry, I don't
it's
think he's
just
coming
not worth
back.
it.
I don't
they're
think
not
they
making
probably
him
not
back.
coming
don't
back.
put him in.
Why would they
No
risk
way.
him? I don't think
And
it's gonna
plus,
happen.
the only way they'd put him back is if somehow Green Bay scrapes together wins, which I don't see happening either.
And even if he does come back, he'll be rusty against Carolina and Minnesota. So
Yeah, well, he is Aaron Rodgers, so let's relax on that.
He's a beaten up Aaron Rodgers.
Number 18 is Eli Manning, who I just wrote LOL because who's going to pick up Eli Manning and start him right now?
No.
Number 19, Tyrod Taylor, who I know you like because of matchups, Dan. So
Love him.
give me your thoughts on him.
So he's only owned in 45% of leagues, and he is starting this week. That was announced this morning. He should earn his job back 100% after Peterman's 5 picks. He even had a good fantasy outing last week after only playing a half. He had like 18 fantasy points or something ridiculous. And this week he plays an exploitable Chiefs defense, so I don't see a situation where he doesn't earn the job back. He also has the best playoff matchups of any QB except for maybe Phillip Rivers, where he plays the Colts, the Finns, and the Pats. It's just... I take him. He's been very consistent, and every week he's started. In my opinion, they should never have pulled him for Peterman in the first place. I like Peterman, but Tyrod has not been bad enough to pull him, and he's been very consistent.
Well, if you believe in having a chip on your shoulder, Tyrod definitely sounds like he has one right now.
Oh, he's got something to prove, and I think he's going to be great rest of season. Pick that guy up.
So then number 20 is Case Keenum, who, Darren, I believe you said you like Case Keenum?
I do like Case Keenum, but I wouldn't go with him over a lot of other guys.
Okay.
I just like their offense in general. For the rest of the year, in terms of Case Keenum, I see him being, an average, above average, around, averaging 14 to 15 points a game. Nothing special.
Cool. And then so next up is Josh McCown. And Dan, you said you like Josh McCown?
It's not that I love him. I think he's good in week 14. So he's got the 14th most fantasy points of any quarterback, and he's only 32% owned because he's just coming off of a bye week. I mean, don't start him this week against Carolina, but I could see him being successful against Denver in Week 14 because I don't think Denver is the same defense, and I see with the quarterback situation them putting offenses into positive game scripts. I mean, let's see how Paxton Lynch does, but I think it could possibly actually be a good outing in Week 14.
I have a tough time thinking that there wouldn't be someone better than that, but fair enough. We'll watch that going forward.
Point, yeah.
And then who's your surprise guy?
Okay, so disclaimer: if you're eating food right now, or if you're playing the game of Operation for some reason, just stop for a minute.
CJ Beathard?
It's not CJ Beathard. Oh hell no, don't touch CJ Beathard. But this quarterback is the 21st best quarterback for points in the league, so not good, and causes projectile vomiting at the mere mention of his name. You shouldn't trust him.
Don't tell me you don't say Blake Bortles.
You just ruined the name. It's
no,
Blake
you
Bortles. Okay, so listen. His matchups for the rest of the season are good.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. And he's had a hard schedule for the first 11 weeks. Yes, he threw up a dud in Cleveland, but that's because it was such a cold game that you don't throw as well in cold games. Okay, here's the schedule coming up. Cardinals, Colts, Seahawks, Texans, 49ers. I know he plays the Seahawks in Week 14. That's scary. I probably wouldn't play him in Week 14. Maybe go find somebody like Tyrod or somebody else to play with him. But Texans and 49ers the last 2 weeks, and he actually has been somewhat consistent the last 3 to 4 weeks minus the Cleveland game. You know, with your boy Dede Westbrook coming back in the system, with Marquise Lee being as good as he is, Mercedes Lewis is starting to get involved in that offense. I think Blake Bortles is a manageable person, and he's the king of garbage time. What's more garbage time than the end of the season?
I would temper your expectations. That's
if
the one thing I have to say.
If anybody listening plays Blake Bortles in weeks 15 and 16 and win their championship playing Blake Bortles, you're welcome onto this podcast anytime, and you can give me my second slap. Because that is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
As someone who was betting on Andrew Luck in a 14-person league where everybody's rostering 2 quarterbacks, Blake Bortles is kind of my only hope in that league. I'm 7-4, so I'm making the playoffs. Okay. But I am personally counting on Blake Bortles for weeks 15 and 16, and I don't think you should. But I think if you're in a deep league like me where there's 14 teams and every single person has 2 quarterbacks, then I think you can do worse than Blake Bortles.
You can do worse. Absolutely.
That's incredible. But anyway, so we're just about going to wrap up. We'd just like to get our bet settled for next week. So what we're going to do is we're going to go by running backs, top running back ranking. And the loser will be eating a good old glob of wasabi right off the bat.
Whatever they serve us at that sushi place.
Exactly, whatever they serve us there. Yeah. And so we did our order, and with the first pick is Daniel.
No, Darian.
No, I got it.
I screwed that one up, but Darian. All I know is I have last pick. That's all that matters to me.
So in my kind of rational thinking, the top 2 guys are Bell and Gurley projected going into this week. Someone give me Bell's matchup. Who is he playing?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Hold on.
I can find it. Running backs.
Sorry.
Bell is playing Green Bay on Sunday night.
He's playing Green Bay, who actually does have a decent run defense. And Gurley's playing, again, a trending upward defense in New Orleans. But they lost a big piece of their defense last week in Okafor. So I think they might be able to be had. All so right, I'm taking Todd Gurley.
Oh, what? You're not taking Lev Bell. Okay. See, I was just ready to sit here going, I don't know why you're giving this long of an explanation for picking Lev Bell. Because
I'm taking Todd Gurley, baby.
I think it's a good call. You should probably leave him too, Dan.
All right. Well, see, I had them personally ordered Bell, Ingram, Gurley, so I was going to leave you Gurley, George. But, I mean, I guess I just played my hand. I'm taking Lev Bell. I don't think there's...
I think that's a pretty easy one. Yeah, and I am taking Leonard Fournette.
Whoa!
Yeah!
Okay.
Yeah!
Can you tell us why?
I'll tell you why, because I think he's going to get another 25 carries, and I think he's been really good with all of his touches this year, minus 1 game, and he seems healthy now, and when he's been healthy, he's been incredible, and I think he's just going to have a monster game.
My reasoning is I think the New Orleans Rams game is just going to be a 50 to 45.
Yeah, I'm really glad you didn't take Ingram for that exact reason.
I'm a Rams fan. There was no way I was taking Ingram. It just wasn't going to happen.
And just so the listeners know, you were last because you lost a very scientific game of odds, evens, odds, and rock paper scissors. It's not just we're just shading you into going 4 to 5 losses.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
I mean, I hope you do. I don't actually hope you do.
Well, that'll do it for this week, and we'll be back after Thanksgiving. We're gonna do a little different. We're going to do a draft getting into the playoffs next week. We'll sort out the details and we'll have that ready for you. But talk to us in a week's time and we'll have a fun little draft on air. See you guys.
See you later.
Thanks for listening.